I've been to Busch Gardens Tampa twice now, and I've ridden all the roller coasters they have to offer. This park boasts one of the deepest lineups in the country, but I've got some pretty strong opinions on what I think of some of them. This is every coaster at Busch Gardens Tampa, ranked, from worst to best. What's up guys, Dr. Coaster here, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we'll be ranking every roller coaster at Busch Gardens Tampa. But before we dive into today's video, if you haven't already, then be sure to drop the video a like, as it helps me fight the YouTube algorithm. While you're at it, subscribe to the channel as well, so you don't miss out on more roller coaster and theme park content, just like this. As mentioned, I made the trek to Busch Gardens Tampa recently for the second time, and was finally able to ride all of the park's coasters following the opening of Iron Gwazi, and Cheetah Hunt deciding that it actually wanted to operate this day. So without further delay, let's start out these rankings with number 10, Air Grover. Definitely the least intense coaster in the park, but Busch Gardens incorporates this well into the Sesame Street section. Air Grover is a Zero family model and closely resembles its counterpart at SeaWorld Orlando, Super Grover's Boxcar Derby. This ride allows a nice entry-level coaster for younger guests, and gears them up for what might be the more intimidating coasters at the park. If this is the worst coaster in the park, you're doing something right. Similar to Air Grover is the next coaster on the list. Number 9, Sand Serpent. Nothing crazy here, just your typical Wild Mouse coaster manufactured by Mock Rides. Standing a little over 45 feet tall, Sand Serpent incorporates some quick, small drops and tight turns that make you feel like you might fly off the rails. I rode this coaster with my brother, both full-grown men, and ended up throwing ourselves into each other on the turns to spice up the ride a little bit. It's definitely a tight squeeze for getting in and out, but I definitely do this one for credit and having some fun with friends and family. Number 8, Cobra's Curse. Anyone that knows me, know that I'm a sucker for theming. But this also isn't designed to be a high thrill coaster. Cobra's Curse is a family coaster, and it does its job quite well. I make sure to ride this when I'm at the park, as it's a fun little break from the more thrilling attractions at the park. The theming is easily the most elaborate at Busch Gardens Tampa, and has my favorite queue out of any of the coasters. This isn't just because of the theming, but also for the air conditioning. When you're cooking in the Florida sun, make sure to stop by this ride just for that alone. As for the ride itself, it features a rare elevator lift, sends riders forward, backward, and spinning at different portions of the ride. And let's not forget, features even more theming to round out the ride. The tilt towards the snake is just awesome. The ride has a bit of a rattle, but is tolerable. Definitely be sure to check this ride out if you're ever at the park. It's a must-do in my opinion. Number 7, Scorpion. While this coaster definitely feels a little out of place in this park, and it's the oldest operating coaster there, opening in 1980, I'm so glad that this coaster exists. There's not enough of the Schwarzkopf loopers around anymore, so anytime I get to ride one, it's a real treat. Don't take Scorpion's looks for granted. This may look like a portable fairground type of coaster, but it really packs in the thrills. Even though it only reaches the top speed of 41 miles per hour and traverses just a single inversion, this thing is intense. Scorpion also features a pass through the vertical loop and an awesome triple helix all the way down to ground level. They don't make many rides like this anymore, and I'm happy Busch Gardens Tampa is taking care of this classic ride. Number 6, Tigress. I really struggled with this one, because Tigress was far more intense than I remembered it being during my first visit. But there's a couple things holding it back. The first, and more minor thing, is that it is a clone. There isn't another Skyrocket 2 nearby, so I'll pretty much give it a pass here. The second reason is the trains. These things are just no fun for me whatsoever. Cramped is an absolute understatement, and I'll get more into that when I talk about Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando. The shin guards and lap bar are not tall people friendly, to say the least, and the comfort collars just get in the way. Yet, despite all this, Tigress is still a lot of fun. The launches are better than expected, the drops outperform what you think they could do, and it's hard to top a slow roll 150 feet up in the air. Tigress was dubbed a filler coaster leading up to the addition of Iron Gwazi, but it is so much more. It's a super smooth, short, but sweet ride that you gotta be sure to try out for yourself. Number 5, brace yourself, Kumba. I know this ride has a cult following, and the recent, now debunked rumors of its demise caused quite a stir. For me, Kumba just didn't live up to the expectations that I had for it. I first rode Kumba on my 2021 trip and knew immediately that this thing was relentless, but also a tad too radly for me. I'm definitely a fan of the layout, the 7 inversions are great, and the setting of the ride, tucked away by itself, is beautiful, with some great views from the lift hill. And let's not forget one of the most iconic elements on any coaster with the interlocking corkscrews. One of my favorite photo spots to date. I gave it a second chance this past summer, and while it was still a little more intense than I prefer, I can totally understand why it has the following that it does. It's just not my cup of tea. At the end of the day, I'd love to see Kumba get some work done. maybe even a complete redo like Hulk at Islands of Adventure. But I wouldn't complain a single bit if Busch Gardens replaced it with a state-of-the-art Giga Coaster.
That is blasphemous! That is blasphemous!
Number 4. SheiKra. Story time. This one was an experience this past trip, after absolutely loving it my first trip. I try not to ding a ride to the bad operations, but I had a ride op completely pin me to the back of my seat. And no, I'm not talking whiny enthusiast complaining, "Wah, I didn't get any airtime." I literally mean that this ride op put his entire body weight behind him as he physically pinned the restraint to me. Nah, scratch that. As he pinned the restraint to the back of the seat. I was no longer there. I had already met the verify and had the restraint safely resting against my shoulders. And no, in case you are wondering, I am not a large guest. I honestly think the ride op may have even jumped a little bit. I was just in complete disbelief as to what was happening. I'm not kidding when I tell you that I could not move, and this ride was absolutely painful. I could not wait to get off of it, and that's a shame since it's one of my favorites in the park. One of my arms actually ended up falling asleep. I didn't know a restraint could come down that far. It's safe to say I did not revisit SheiKra that day despite wanting to ride again. However, focusing on my first trip to the park, SheiKra provided some of the greatest views I've ever gotten from a ride. Looking over the safari and seeing downtown St. Petersburg and Tampa in the distance. The airtime was phenomenal, and it doesn't get much more exciting than a 200-foot vertical drop. After my first visit to Busch Gardens Tampa, I initially declared SheiKra my favorite in the park, before bumping Montu into that spot soon after. How my experience has changed with this ride. While this was a fairly negative entry on this list, I needed to share that story. SheiKra is still a great ride, it just didn't stack up to the top 3 in the rest of the park for me. While we're on the topic of stapling, let's talk awful restraints, because the ones on Cheetah Hunt are just that. No need for a ride up to pin you down because this ride will just do it for you. I'd imagine for guests shorter than my 6'2" self that this may not be as much of an issue. And this ride is just so unique that I kinda just brush it aside anyways. But I do believe it would be a spot higher on this list if it featured something more comfortable. Cheetah Hunt wastes no time whatsoever launching you into its layout with a surprisingly solid first launch. The ride soon shoots you through another launch and then up a super steep hill to reach a scenic turnaround to take in views around you. Showing off the beauty of this park is something that Busch Gardens does exceptionally well, and Cheetah Hunt is no different. The drop coming back down off of the scenic turnaround provides some fantastic airtime as you feel the restraint start to come down even further. So be sure to enjoy this moment as much as you can if you're tall. Cheetah Hunt then dives through some trenches and tunnels before flipping to the 0G roll, which is the only inversion on the ride. Most rides would have already concluded at this point, but Cheetah Hunt still packs in another launch and some incredibly fun switchbacks that mimic, imagine this, a cheetah hunting its prey. Cheetah Hunt has an awesome theme, a fun layout, surprisingly intense launches, and perhaps most importantly, it provides more timid guests with a stepping stone to the more intimidating coasters in the park. God, if only it didn't have those restraints. Number 2. Montu. After my first visit, this was my favorite coaster in the park, until no coaster in particular whatsoever dethroned it this visit. Despite getting bumped a spot, Montu would probably be a number 1 roller coaster at 90% of the parks in America, and I still thoroughly enjoy it. Montu is the first coaster to welcome guests to the park, where it towers over the parking lot. One of the first things I noticed my first visit was how the weathered paint job actually fit the Egyptian desert theme of this section of the park. This year, however, it's looking like a big old box of Kraft mac and cheese. Paint scheme aside, the queue still kicks some serious butt and the ride absolutely hauls. Standing at 150 feet tall, there's very few inverted coasters that get much taller than this. And for its age, runs surprisingly smooth considering how some of the other 1990s B&Ms ride. Especially since Busch Gardens Tampa is a year-round park. That's a lot of cycles. I did bump my jaw once on the restraints, but that's nothing. Also props to the ride crew here for allowing me to ride in peace. These 7 inversions kick some serious butt and that bat wing is something out of this world. While I said Montu was my favorite coaster after the last visit to the park, it has been rightfully dethroned following my second trip. Coming in at number 1, Iron Gwazi. Surprise, surprise, I know. Unfortunately, I only got 3 rides this visit as there was a litany of maintenance issues plaguing the ride this day. If you were following along on Instagram throughout the course of this visit, the park was absolutely dead. But my ride count certainly did not indicate that one bit. I spent more time in this queue than I did anywhere else in the park that day. Combined. I know of enthusiasts that visited the park the day after and racked up double-digit ride counts. Okay, moving on to the ride though.
Just get on with it!
It starts out with a thrilling ascent through a wasp nest before... Yeah, that actually happened. I was terrified we were going to get stuck with how this day was going thus far. Anyhow, My 3 rides consisted of 1 back row ride and 2 second-to-back row rides, and Iron Gwazi threw me around in ways I did not know were possible. I was not able to ride up front, so let me know what you think about that in the comment section below, and let's talk about it. This was easily the most out of control I've ever felt in a coaster, and as you will see in my rankings at the end of the year, it performed quite well. I don't want to spoil the ride for those that haven't ridden it yet, as I don't like things being spoiled for me either, but I think everyone is aware of the first drop and death roll by now. I haven't ridden enough to have a favorite element on the ride quite yet, but careening toward the ground entirely out of your seat is tough to top. Iron Gwazi was so insane that my legs actually started cramping up and I had to hold on. Which brings me to my next point. RMC, can we pretty please have some tall people rows on some of these coasters in the future? Please. YouTube premiere. I'll be riding Steel Vengeance and Air Force 1 later this year, so expect a video at some point stacking those rides up against each other. Should be a fun comparison. Iron Gwazi, you're number 1 in the park, and it's not even close. Well done. Thank you all for watching. That was every coaster at Busch Gardens Tampa, ranked from worst to best. What do you think of my rankings? Let me know in the comments down below, and what your rankings look like as well. If you haven't already, be sure to drop the video a like, and subscribe to the channel for more roller coaster and theme park content just like this. If you're craving even more content, then you can follow me over on Instagram as well, at Dr_Coaster. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.